There was a mix.
Okay, I'm going to call the regular meeting to order. Ask everyone to please stand for salute to our flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'd like to announce first that, let's see, we had an order for public hearing to establish the Willis Hill Estates Drainage Improvement Area due to publishing issues regarding the public hearing. We will re-advertise, we will advertise it and hold this on October 12th at 7 p.m. Okay, so and then the last board meeting, we held open the reclassification of 1403 East Victor Road, commonly known as Stonebrook subdivision, from a residential overlay district A to a residential overlay district C. This was held open from the August 23rd meeting up until September the 1st for written comments, and I know a number of written comments were sent in, and the town clerk did distribute them to the town board and the planning board, I presume, as well. Okay, good. And I do know that our developer has sent some changes to the reclassification, and I think I'd like to have him share this with the town board at this time and to the public. Do we have any? We have anything in a PDF that goes up on the screen, or no? Do we have something? Great. Okay, thank you. Just so the public has an understanding as well.
Get on, hit the button on the bottom.
Right at the
Green
bottom.
thing.
Yep, it is now.
There,
So
thanks.
that makes it easier, too. I'm Jeff Smith with Woodstone Custom Homes, and with me tonight are Tim Smith with Woodstone and Lucas Bushin with Marathon and Bob Bringley with Marathon Engineering. As Jack was introducing, I'd like to take a few minutes to update the board and the public to potentially on YouTube and wherever. But we were here August 23rd regarding a request to reclassify the overlay district from an A to C at 1403 East Victor Road. At that time, we shared a concept plan showing a maximum density of 92 units on 115 acres. And that concept plan included minimum lot widths ranging from 80 to over 100 feet on 2 streets, connections to both the dead-end Sunray Crest and East Victor roads, and preserving a minimum of 50% of the land in Victor and 100% of the land in Farmington to be preserved as dedicated parkland. And these would be dedicated to the towns, respectively, Victor and Farmington. Residential densities in the area currently range from 1.8 units per acre in Boca Estates, which is where Sunray Crest and Field Crest are located, and 0.5 units per acre at Southgate Hill subdivision to our south. The public hearing provided very valuable input to us regarding concept design presented, and what we walked away with were the primary concerns of neighboring properties and board members seem to focus in three areas. One, increased traffic, particularly through the existing streets of Sunray Crest and Field Crest. Secondly, stormwater drainage, particularly in the rear yards of Field Crest, and also the interconnectivity of sidewalks and safe access to the Auburn Trail. We specifically addressed those concerns in a redesign to address traffic concerns. We analyzed alternative means of secondary access, which is required by New York State Fire Code. Our proposal includes redesigning the loop, as you see up above, and the cul-de-sac, and eliminating 12 additional lots that we had proposed to be added to Sunray Crest, and reducing the total number of lots within the subdivision from 92 to 85. We had a second, there you go. In that figure A on the left and figure B on the right, A was what our original concept indicated, and quite honestly, that concept was partly just to calculate a maximum density, but as we heard from the neighbors, and certainly didn't argue with them at all, there was potential for traffic being shortcutted through Sunray Crest, an existing subdivision in Field Crest. So we brainstormed that and came up with the idea of redesigning the loop, and which offers additional maneuvers in order to access Sunray Crest, which is an effective means of deterring traffic into that area. So the redesign addresses traffic concerns while still maintaining the benefits of improved access for emergency and town vehicles. In addition, proposed layout reduces the overall size of the subdivision and creates a green space buffer, as you can see at the end of at Sunray Crest. There will be really little reason for people to leave the large loop or even the cul-de-sac, small cul-de-sac, to go Sunray Crest through an existing subdivision. To address the stormwater concerns, and maybe if you could put back the larger map, please. The drainage study was undertaken for the area, and it was found that the majority of the area drains directly to Mud Creek, and approximately 12 acres in the left-hand portion of the subdivision does drain to the field back of the homes along Field Crest. 21-inch storm sewer within Boca extends to the backyards of properties at 1353, and of course that map is kind of small from this distance, but at the back of 1353 and 1357 Field Crest, and that 21-inch storm pipe that is part of Boca Estates receives our 12 acres. In addition, there's also about 2 acres within the Boca subdivision that goes to that 21-inch storm sewer. The residents on Field Crest expressed concerns with the capacity of the drainage pipe and described times where the stormwater ponding was in their backyards. So even though our requirement for developing our subdivision is to not increase the level of stormwater to the adjacent parcels, we felt that given the concerns, we would propose that the majority of that drainage of the 12 acres will be captured in our detention facilities and will be redirected away from Boca Estates. So as we studied it, under existing conditions with poor ground cover and poor soils, it's estimated that a 10-year storm event will lead to approximately 10 cubic feet per second of water flowing into Boca Estates. We propose leaving only the rear yard treed buffer draining in that area, and we would reduce that outflow by 80% down to only about 2 cubic feet per second that would go towards where it has been for the last 10 or 20 years. So that should substantially solve that without any effort on Boca Estates residents. Finally, to address interconnectivity and safe access to Auburn Trail, our concept now includes sidewalks. If you took a close-up of that picture, you would see them within the picture, but it is difficult from this distance. But we propose sidewalks interconnecting Sunray Crest all the way around our loop and to the entrance at the East Victor Road, as well as extending to Auburn Trail. So with these improvements in the plan, we feel that the plan is consistent with the residential area surrounding it. Our density of 0.85 per unit now per acre is 26% less than the average density between Boca and Southgate. The plan provides lot sizes, widths, and depths exceeding those in the surrounding subdivisions to the point where we're 50% more than the average size of those lots in the two subdivisions. Our development largely solves the drainage issues that currently exist within Boca, and it will provide a better access for emergency, school, and maintenance vehicles to the existing streets of Fieldcrest and Sunray. It is consistent with the 2015 future land use plan of the comprehensive plan of Victor, which recommended the most dense neighborhood density of 1 unit per acre for this parcel. Also, it's consistent with the 2021 draft sanitary sewer plan, which recommends changing the present lowest density designation of the parcel to the highest designation instead. It returns value to the owners of the parcel who lost it in 2000 when it was reclassified as an A overlay from an R2. And finally, it provides an opportunity for nearly 70 acres of public parkland accessible from Auburn Trail to the south and townlands to the north, which will offer unique access to a mile of creek bed as well as an infinite amount of hiking areas. This is one of only a few substantive parcels that remain in Victor that can be directly served by gravity sewer, discharging to the Farmington sewer treatment plant without depending on a pump station. That's rare now in the town, and to me it doesn't make sense to have a rural density overlay assigned to it rather than a neighborhood overlay density, which it deserves, and will clearly fit within the overall build-out strategy of the town of Victor. So we're asking the board to approve a change in the overlay district from A to C with the understanding that we would proceed with the concept plans as you see currently. And of course there'll be some fine tuning, but conceptually it will be very much as you see it on the monitor today. So we're here to answer any questions you may have and or the public.
Jeff, if you could help clarify for myself. So sidewalks, are the sidewalks just leading up to the cul-de-sac and then the trail, or is there sidewalks throughout your proposed?
The sidewalks would come from Sunray Crest. There would be a piece of sidewalk that goes up the cul-de-sac, and then the other portion of the cul-de-sac would go towards the loop and then entirely around the loop. It is we are proposing one-sided, but as Bob showed, it would entirely loop the main road, as well as there's just a spur that goes around the cul-de-sac. We didn't see the need to surround the entire cul-de-sac itself.
Well, I think we certainly thank you for listening to the residents and certainly the concerns of the residents on Fieldcrest. Certainly sensitivity towards potential drainage issues that have taken place. I know when we did the site walk, Councilman Kohovic engaged with the resident. I think it that had concerns about runoff into his property. I know Stormwater Management's been out to see him, and I think our highway superintendent's also looked at that area. I know there was finger pointing towards Southgate Hill subdivision, but also runoff into the farm, today's existing.
Right. We are familiar with what of that problem, which is actually on the west side of East Victor Road, and we think it's from Southgate. That the pipe that is underneath East Victor Road that would drain to our farmland is fairly undersized compared to what potentially some of the storm runoff is on the west side of East Victor. So when that pipe can't discharge it to our farmland. It goes to the resident on the west side of the road, which is who Ed was talking to that evening.
Okay.
So we are not to say that we were suggesting that we would solve that problem. We feel that certainly our runoff can be solved to the Boca Estates area because we can divert our drainage, but the drainage that's causing the problems on the west side of East Victor really doesn't implicate our parcel. It is from areas beyond us, and it is not generated from us.
Because when I look at the buffer behind the Fieldcrest residential area there, that's seems like a pretty lengthy distance to hit that stormwater.
It is not. We have, Bob Bringley and Lucas have both felt that we have enough grade differential from those rear lots that are adjacent to Fieldcrest that we can ship that water to that central detention facility. There probably is only about a 6-foot grade difference now, but with road alignment, we feel that we can largely divert that. The 12 acres, and I don't have a pointer here, but the 12 acres goes up substantially along adjacent to Sunray Quest, probably about the middle of that area. It goes way up there. So there's the furthest lots that are backing up to the rear yards of Fieldcrest, a portion of those lots would not be divertible, and that's when we suggested that that's about. Now you're going to see me shake though when I do it. They should make these longer.
When you say 6 feet, so is Fieldcrest 6 feet higher, or?
Yes. No, our property is already 6 feet higher than that. So if this is where we want to divert the water to, which is our storm facility in the center of subdivision, that area right there, which is part of this 12 acres that goes this way, that area is about 6 feet higher than the detention pond grades at this point.
That's why the water pool's in the back of Fieldcrest.
Well, this is low, but this right up here is high. So this is the 12 acres that's discharging to this 21-inch storm. So we can divert 80% of that 12 acres to this pond. So only 2 cubic feet per second at a 10-year storm would be proposed to still go to that 21-inch storm pipe. I mean, not to say that, well, Bob, correct me, or Lucas, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the 21-inch storm pipe does currently drain 2 acres from the Boca Estate subdivision, but it takes 12 acres of ours. So it must have been undersized at some point, but also it probably was not figuring that this would often be a ground-barren farm field. So the accelerated rate here of 2 cubic feet per second in a 10-year storm, we can divert that out of that 10, we can convert all but 2. So there'll be a substantial reduction to that storm 21-inch pipe and the rear yards of Fieldcrest. Now, I don't know whether we would necessarily still say that that's a perfect design in Fieldcrest, but if we can divert 80% of the water away from it, I have to believe that it'll largely be suffice.
Well, thank you, and again, for your knowing it's, it's a sensitive area. Planning board will certainly be focused on that as well when you
correct. I mean,
process.
we aren't suggesting that we know all the answers now, but we did see that it was a big enough concern that we did do a full drainage study of where is it coming from and where is it going. And as you were saying, though, this, if I can get my pointer down here, this is where that pipe is coming from the west side, from what we think is an undersized facility on Southgate, and it dumps too much water here too quickly, and instead of going across the road here, it goes here. So that's where that flooding is coming from on the west side. It all is draining this way ultimately. So it's not something that this 115 acres is generating. It's a receiving parcel of that water.
Jeff, I'm going to ask the board members if they have any drainage questions while we're focused kind of on drainage right now. Everyone satisfied with? Okay.
And I think, to go back again, I think it was my son's idea, actually, but I think that that area being redirected really works well. I mean, there'll be very little reason for any traffic through here. And yet, at the same time, it will be a godsend to have better vehicular traffic, school bus, trash pickup, everything, emergency vehicles that will have a way out as they come to pick up school kids instead of turning around right now in a private driveway, essentially.
I would agree. I was very glad to see that. I think the residents on Sunrise Crest will appreciate it.
I think it's a great option, and clearly, as we had suggested at the previous meeting, we lowered the number of units as we suggested we could. And I think, but there is a point to which it's not cost-effective to continue to lower units, because we do feel we have substantial infrastructure investment here, sidewalks and all the other good stuff, that right now is back-ordered and hard to get. Storm pipe, water pipe.
I have two other things I want to mention, actually. Maybe it's three, but it's not on you, but it's just for the public and just, for board members' awareness. So, a couple things. Auction Direct and the medical buildings across the street there. I think the DeFelice is a developer, and when they reach a point where they would need, I think it may be their next phase, if not the one after that, there's a trigger based on their approvals previously from the planning board that they would there'd have to be a signal light there. So the town is having conversations with them as well. So I'm bringing this up because the state of New York, I know folks would love to see a signal light at East Victor Road. I have folks that would love to see a signal light at McMahon Road. And if the DeFelice would, in the town, a requirement would be probably a signal light by Auction Direct and the medical facility. So I know residents, again, I'm bringing that up because the public is saying, what about a signal light there? So what can we do? I think we should certainly, as a town, and I ask our highway superintendent, who was brought forth by some great feedback from residents, that maybe we should look, because there's frustration. Individuals come East Victor Road, they want to take a right-hand turn, but they're waiting and waiting. We know there's certainly delays in going left, but maybe we could look at opportunity to widen that so that there could be a right. We can come up. I know there's a pump station there, right there on the corner of East Victor and 96, but maybe adding a bit of a turning lane there. So that's something that I would ask the highway superintendent to look at. The final thing that I would do is probably we should work with Wes, work with our, do a letter out of the planning and building department showing potential build-out with a number of these projects. We know the Southgate, Mr. Reedman's been here before. We anticipate he'll be coming back as well regarding the project on East Victor and County Road 41. But my point is that I'd like to petition for a speed reduction on East Victor Road, but I'd rather have that, what that bigger picture looks like for the state when they do that analysis. So again, these aren't action items for you, it's just more for public awareness as well.
Right, and we certainly heard at the last meeting that people were concerned about traffic 96 and whether it's Brace Road or East Victor Road intersections. I mean, the good thing in a way in this project is there are a number of outlets to this project, which would include East Victor, going north-south, and then going alternatively over towards the golf course. So you could get to Boughton Hill a couple of different ways, and you can get to 96 a couple of different ways as well. And I think everyone understands, as even Lucas suggested, that additional traffic maneuvers detour traffic. So do sitting a while in a stoplight.
Unfortunately, East Victor Road, like I could go, you can name the road and I'll tell you what its classification, but so many roads are now termed collector roads, and East Victor is one of those that people utilize coming up from some of our southern communities, And in this case, I'm visualizing a motorist on East Victor Road in the morning, and they're taking a left, and they're heading up going to the roundabout, they're going up Liner Road, they're heading to Monroe County. And then they reverse that, and I could give you examples on Willis, Gillis, and where they're coming from. And unfortunately, many individuals, when you want to get on the New York State Thruway or 490, have to come through our town. So East Victor Road clearly qualifies as one of those collector roads. So,
Well,
Making a left off of New Michigan Road, on the Boughton Hill Road, between 4 and 5 o'clock, right?
Well, I can go further than that, say if I live there now, and I see it every morning and every night, and every time in the past 10 to 15 years, they've made our road the detour road, and then they just made East Victor the detour road, more and more people discover it, and the detour ends and they keep using it.
Yeah.
I have to wait to get out of my driveway at 6:30 in the morning. Just, I don't know, it's just.
We have seen that even with our small development off of Strong Road. That Strong Road equally further to the west is also a fairly busy collector road. But
the rate of speed,
that's, the good thing is you have
Rate
to
of
put
speed
more
is terrible.
Dunkin' Donuts around so that they'll stop instead of just drive through.
I think you'll see the same thing in Bluemont also.
Uh,
Trying to make a left,
That's,
right?
yeah.
You know, to make the right is probably a little easier, but to cross over and make that left with the traffic at those peak hours.
I can't make a left off of Church Street at noon, right?
Oh,
any further questions for Mr. Smith?
The one big concern that I have, and it happens not just here, but, I mean, you take and fill a lot in the front with, in this case, you're asking for 85 homes. Your back portion that you call a nature preserve area is landlocked, and it's really not accessible now. Is there a plan in place as to what would happen with that? Or just dedicate it and it's up to somebody else to do the trails, connect the trails, make it usable? Or is it just going to turn to, and it is landlocked, and there's a higher elevation for the railroad track, so it's not accessible now, so.
Well, surprisingly it is. Even the evening that we took a field walk with planning board and town board and conservation board members, there are downtrodden trails existing there now, and where we show a black line coming off of the Auburn Trail is quite heavily trafficked. And, our proposal would be that it would be made more accessible with signage, and potentially trail development. I know that I've talked to the trail individuals, and they would be very excited about extending that. It's underutilized from Sunray Crest, where there are two opportunities, where there are town properties that are immediately adjacent to Sunray, and they could easily be developed and linked. And with our population now, and we found it at Dorchester, a lot of people want trails to hike, and these, well, I don't know, Wes, you could talk to Wes, he biked it a little bit, but not a lot. There are areas that probably would have to be further improved to be biking trails, but clearly it is a great area for hiking trails. And I mean, there's a lot of nice nature back there, and I think there'd be a large percentage of the Auburn Trail users that would like a short, it's a mile loop or so that is definitely very interesting. So I mean, we wouldn't have any problem on carving it all up and offering it as conservation areas for the lots. But I just don't think that's an appropriate use of the land. I think an appropriate use is to provide public access. It is very clearly separated from where our lots are. The topography is such that our lots will still feel very private, even though there could be all sorts of activities along the creek. So I might be concerned more if it was exposing lots to a lack of privacy. But clearly, I think there's a great advantage of dedicating the land. If the town doesn't see that, we can carve it up. I would probably propose it to only give it to a few different parcels, rather than have it carved up 80 ways.
Brian, you have any thoughts? I'd love to, I'm sure the planning board's going to ask you as well.
Brian Emelson, Director of Parks and Recreation. Just my comments initially, I haven't reviewed this project, would be that right now your dedicated parkland is twice the amount of acreage per capita in Victor. So it's great. You have 450 acres plus 330 acres, even more down in Boughton Park. This parcel wasn't identified in the Parks and Recreation Master Plan that you adopted back in 2019. Doesn't mean you can't take dedication of it. I would echo Councilman Guinan's question about access to it, because even though it might remain passive, you would need to access it to not only understand what's out there now. People put up tree stands in vacant lands, and you have to come in and take them out, and you have to maintain trees that come down, and even around trails, especially if they're around a highly desirable creek. So you'd want to take a look at that. We typically don't look at acquiring parkland that is in, if you will, people's backyards. Because if that does get developed, you might choose to develop it differently than the developer is suggesting. Your needs might change, and you might need additional ball fields in your inventory or something like that. And so when we have Village on the Park as an example, where we have dedicated parkland that wraps around, and, you know, obviously it can be somewhat parochial to the neighborhood. So more frequently you see the conservation easement type of thing, and he gets his set-asides that way. But if it's something that you think is valuable and in the best interest of the community to acquire as dedicated parkland, you know, we can certainly take that up as a group and see how we would choose to develop that or not develop it or protect it or moving forward. But
Brian, with the Village on the Park, because that is the one example that we have in the town,
yes,
favorable to the residents of that community, though, that they have that parkland surrounding them?
it depends on where their house is. I mean, some like having access to a sledding hill out their backyard. You know, we made improvements with the neighborhood to that. Some don't like having the traffic that occurs with athletic fields and ball fields in their backyards.
Some people like dumping their brush back there.
Some people like trimming their evergreen trees and piling them out there, as Councilman Condon mentions. But, you know, it's sometimes challenging, but it's not something you typically see here because of just the amount of development that's occurred here over the past 30 years. You have that 450 acres, and typically towns of this size are well under 200 acres per capita. So, and it wasn't identified in the plan. It doesn't mean you can't do it. If there's something valuable in there, there's a specific set of hardwoods that you want to acquire, you feel like you need to have people access the stream. It shouldn't be thought of as passive, therefore there's no cost to maintaining. And I want to caution the board at that. There's always cost to maintaining it, whether it is to preserve it in its natural state or develop it for active uses. But as we work our way through the planning process, we can take that up.
Have you ever walked it, Brian?
I have not. I'm not familiar with the parcel.
Yeah. I mean, it's a nice gorge. I mean, it's very pretty. I mean, obviously, it's a nice gorge down through there, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I mean, Jeff's point is that, who knows? I mean, maybe it might be something we end up.
Sure,
with
absolutely.
something, so.
I appreciate the developer also making bicycle and pedestrian connections. So.
And I'm all about open space, the portion of it, but if the town doesn't agree to take it on, it just becomes inaccessible
Right.
land.
Right.
And that's what's happened around town a lot. And the perception is that it's a nature preserve and elevated overlooks and rocks. And it's all there. But if nobody can get to it and nobody's going to take on the cost of it, is that the trade-off for going from an A to a C and skipping anything? And in essence, I'd like to see a somewhat of a plan in place and what's really going to happen to it. Otherwise, it just doesn't, it doesn't help us. It doesn't make it better. I don't know what that might be, but I hate to abandon it just to, to get 85 or 90 houses as close to the road as we can get them. That's all. The comp plan called for the open space for sure, and it could be beautiful, but are we going to take on the expense of it? That's the thing. Or it's just inaccessible land.
What's your thoughts on the Citizens Advisory Committee kicking this around in a meeting? And
I think once it becomes, we're tasked with, I'm given a formal packet of this and you charge me with reviewing it, I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion. I just know that there's a lot of things on our residents' lists of wants and needs already in our master plan. This might be relocating some of those items to that area. Probably not the high priority items, just because of what it sounds like the nature of the parcel is. But it's something certainly I think it'll work its way through the Park and Rec Advisory Committee.
as it touches Farmington, Mertensia Park.
Yeah, how does that look? How does that look as far as like who's maintaining what portions of that parkland? I'd want to understand that.
Touches Mertensia, it crosses the county line, or town line.
Line goes right down through
A
the township.
portion of, right, that dark line that partially goes through the one water feature there is the town boundary. So a portion of Farmington, and I think, Bob, you have to revise the shape of that detention facility. We would not be in both towns with that water plan. But
Most of the gorge
When-
of
when
the
it-
creek is in Farmington.
right, that's correct. The prettiest portion of that stream is in Farmington. Now, quite honestly, we are very open to what happens with that open space, and it's town requirement to have 50% open space.
I know.
So I know you can question what good is it, but it's got to be there. So our proposal we would bend to the preferences of the town, planning board, conservation board, citizens boards, whatever. I felt because of the nature of that stream bed particularly, that it's a very unique area. And so I thought it's a portion of our 115 acres, but admittedly, that 15 acres is in the town of Farmington. So if among all the discussion that is going to go on, we could certainly treat that acreage differently, and if the town of Farmington didn't want it, then it is really not part of our 50% in Victor, because that 50% is in Victor left of that line. So that 15 acres is 100% open, and the Victor land is 50% open. I thought it was a nice idea, but on the other hand, I'm not coming from the perspective of a parks director that says, oh, one more thing to maintain. If the town doesn't want that, as I mentioned before, we could certainly treat it differently. I would hesitate. An option that often comes up is an HOA, and that's very difficult to deal with that. One, they're costly to develop. Two, no matter what level of HOA it is, it still requires the mechanism to maintain it, and therefore I wouldn't be comfortable putting the open space in an HOA. I would be comfortable divvying it up among a number of lots, or even one lot. One of the advantages, admittedly, that we've found in the differences between putting an imaginary conservation line along somebody's back boundary as versus having it another person's property, they treat it differently. So that, for example, in Stonington Ridge, there's imaginary boundaries, and pretty much people mow beyond those boundaries. They do a number of things beyond those boundaries, and it's hard to control. On the other hand, what we've done in our Willis Hill project is to make that part of an individual's lot, in which case it's private property, in which case you don't see that ability to go beyond those conservation areas, and you tend to maintain exactly what was intended, open space. People aren't mowing it, pheasant live there, fox live there, whatever.
And that's my point. We're experiencing this all over town, a lot in that section of town. Technically, a conservation easement, which is over and above, if you go by open space, is not restricted like a conservation easement is. And a conservation easement is technically supposed to be what's enumerated in the green infrastructure inventory. And it's not meant to be your entire 50% open space. The conservation easement technically should be exactly what the, you
Well,
got,
we do both. I mean, our open space is under a conservation easement in all the properties we've worked with.
I know, but it makes it very restrictive that you can't, and then you couldn't really even do the trails and stuff.
Well, no, it depends on how you define those easements, and we've
Right.
structured very individual conservation easements for, even within our Willis Hill, there's easements that will allow even farming use and certain other types of use.
Which is when we did the conservation plans that we called for, when you had open space, you could do, it was at the time, when you're talking about, was meant to maintain agriculture, which has been,
And-
we've
and-
gone beyond that in Victor, but, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not arguing the point, I'm just saying that we need to really look at, if you've got 50% open space and you don't want to just shut it down with a conservation
Right.
easement, what are we going to do with it? I'd like to see a plan in place before we say, okay, we can go right from an A to a C and then,
I don't disagree with that, but I don't think it has anything to do with an A to a C decision.
well, just the number of houses and
In
how
general,
much
it
space you
still
have
does,
behind the houses.
the same issue is going to be there regardless. It's an issue of open space requirements. In Willis Hill, we specifically structured them in large enough areas that could be farmed, and they are being farmed. In some areas, it's just not appropriate. Either the lay of the land, I mean, a good percentage of this is not farmland. And the portion that is farmland is most appropriate for housing because it deals with,
It's
you
small,
know,
it's small. It's a small field and it's hard to get.
right. I mean, and you and everyone else here on the board knows that it's hard to get farmers to farm land right now because they're jumping equipment all over the place. But again, I'm not arguing with you either, but I don't think it has anything to do with A to C. I think it has to do with larger issues in terms of open space. How can you maintain farmland in Victor and make it viable? As I said to somebody at one of the last meetings, the town may have to start buying farm equipment. And that's essentially what's going to happen because farmers, the future generations are not going to support it. And if you want it, it's like subsidizing it somehow and buying some equipment and making Mark head of farmland. I don't,
One point, Jeff. Bob Bringley, Marathon Engineering. One thing we saw that made this piece different, Mike, was that this piece is really being actively used by the public now. The current farmer has allowed people to use that trail. It's heavily used. So people come down Auburn Trail and they're hiking all along the creek.
And they threw off the guys with the four-wheelers and all that stuff that were down. And the trails are basically in that parcel that's in Farmington, so.
Yeah, and then, but you can still hike all the way around, back up to the back, and then come back to Sunray Trail. So we thought this was a little different in its uniqueness because it was so actively being used by the public right now because of Auburn Trail. And I probably agree with you. If this was just more landlocked, then it would be more difficult to use. And 90% of this is wooded. The whole eastern half is mature woods, and then the northern part was logged, but even that was going to come back to a wooded state.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very unique.
but at the same time, we would bow to the town's preferences. We can certainly subdivide that Victor parcel, whatever is most appropriate. And possibly there's a separation between, Farmington would want that 15 acres and Victor would not want the 50 acres. And that clearly can come through the planning board process, could be back to the town board, back to the conservation board, et cetera. But I don't think it has much to do with A to C. The same issue would be if this were an A, but in fact, it is not likely to be well-developed as an A because of the issues of, you have 2 entrances required for development, and I don't know what crazy guy is going to make a street from Sunray Crest all the way to East Victor Road and only put 33 units on it.
Supervisor, I have a few notes here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I guess just so recapping on the public comment, and we had a lot of public comments, both written and presented at the last meeting. And I think amongst those, certainly first and foremost was the question of stormwater management, which I do feel comfortable with the fact that the plan and the discussions and the extra work that's been done since the last meeting does mitigate some of that, and I believe that we probably would mitigate some of the drainage issues into the Fieldcrest Lane area. Additionally, I know that the public comment talked about compatibilities in the neighborhood and that the existing Boca Park Estates, works in harmony with this proposed development. And I think that with the addition of the sidewalks and the trail access, taking away that dead end on Sunray Crest, which is certainly, an issue both from our concern from the town side for access, but also I don't think that the residents like having that dead end there. I think that was noted in a couple of the public comments. So for as far as, interconnectivity, access management, I think that those issues and the concerns have been addressed, and I'm comfortable with that. The only, and I appreciate that because I know last time I was an advocate for the sidewalks, and I appreciate that being added in. The access to the trail, I appreciate that. The only thing I'm held up on a little bit, and to echo off Councilman Guinan, is that it's a big transition. I understand that it's recognized in the comprehensive plan that this is a good area for that, and I appreciate that you've come down to 85 lots. I don't know how much more wiggle room there is. Around if we could get it down, in my own personal opinion, if we could get it down towards the high 70s, around 80. And one consideration, I know we did it in a recent project within the town, was to clean up the appearance from the street side. So from the primary access point at East Victor Road, they cut down some of the units there, so to give it a nicer look from the street, you're not seeing as many properties. I don't know if that's something that could be considered. I don't also know if that might allow maybe a better trail to the Auburn Trail. With the trail that's shown there that runs right along East Victor Road, is that just like a roadside access trail, or what would be considered there?
We were assuming that there would be some extension of the sidewalk, so you didn't have to, entirely get out in the road in order to walk to the Auburn Trail.
So I think all in all, the stormwater management component from the community concern side seemed to be the largest. I feel rather comfortable that a lot of those stormwater management issues would be mitigated with a subdivision here. That said, I would be an advocate for a few. I understand there's a price point that a margin you need to meet. So with being cognizant of that, I would advocate from the town side that we bring the size of the community still down a little bit more. I do appreciate what you did up in the cul-de-sac there as it's drawn currently. I do wonder if some of those properties, like listed as number 1 there and then number 52, the ones that are roadside there in the entrance to the community, if that, if there could be some wiggle room in developing that to have a little bit more open area and better access to the trail as one potential idea. But I mean, by and large, I think that we've met the we've discussed to great length the concerns, the primary concerns that were brought forward in the public comment, and I feel rather comfortable with that.
So, 2 points. One, and I know the board, both town board and planning board, are wrestling with this. Unfortunately, there is no B+. There's an A and a B and a C, and quite honestly, there's kind of a large gap between a B overlay and a C overlay. I don't have any problem stating that we would certainly evaluate further reduction in the number of units, but unfortunately, it's a little premature to do that because we haven't done much for final design yet, which is where our cost factors will start coming to the surface. I mean, I've done certainly rough calculations at this point to get this far. And I don't disagree with you. If we could enhance the entranceway, that would be nice. If it means 1 or 2 units less, I'm always been one that quantity doesn't make sense to us. It's more quality. And the fact that you can get one more lot doesn't mean that it's going to be worth one more unit. I mean, because oftentimes you devalue the other units with that additional lot. So if we can improve it and have it in that closer to 80 range, I would state that I would certainly work towards that. I don't have any problem with that. But the fact is, there is no overlay zoning that allows only 80 units. We either go to 100 or we go to 50.
Sure. And I can appreciate that.
And we hope that, quite honestly, our reputation in Victor helps some, that we do what we say we're going to do, and we've been working in Victor now for a long time.
I mean, so I live on Nature's Way, and, you know, Carrington, Summer Hill, I believe those are a project of yours. You know, my backyard butts up to the backs of those homes now, and I've been very pleased with that, and I think that the neighborhood that I look now at Summer Hill Lane, Carrington, I think it's a really nicely done development, and we walk through that neighborhood, and we know people over there, and I think it's really nice. So, like you said, you have a good rapport and a good history in the town, and I would echo that with my own neighborhood. You know, I think I'm largely in favor of it. I would like to see a reduction slightly, and I understand also, though, that that really isn't what's being discussed here. We're just discussing the overlay, and I think, like I said in the last meeting, to me as a newer councilman, it does seem slightly like the cart's out in front of the horse, because we're discussing things that we haven't gotten to that point yet, because we need to pass the overlay first. So that's where my contention comes in, is I'm supportive of it, but if I say overlay C, all set, you technically could go then before the planning board and present a larger number of units than we've discussed here.
Well, I guess technically we could, but I think it would be very difficult for us from then on with the planning board and anyone else.
And I wouldn't insinuate that you would you would intend to do that, but I would like to see a few less units within this community.
I don't disagree. And, you know, admittedly, the cart before the horse, it is problematic. I mean, we can't spend the tens and even hundreds of thousands of dollars to design a subdivision without knowing whether we have the proper density to do so. So we have to put the cart before the horse a little bit. And we're doing that in good faith and with rules of thumb regarding costs and what we feel we can obtain. Again, you know, I feel that, I mean, there's a build-out scenario in your comprehensive plan that really won't ever be achieved, because it is unlikely for the growth to occur in many of these rural areas the way the build-out's imagining. And I think that from a town planning perspective, it would be better to cluster them in areas that can be properly served with sewers, and particularly gravity sewers. So that's all we're suggesting. So
I agree with that, and just to say, I do thank you for addressing the stormwater management stuff. I think to a very large degree, the public comment was heard by you guys, and you guys acted on that, and I do thank you for doing that.
Thank you, Councilman Cusimano. Appreciate your comments. And you, board members, any other comments?
Well, I was originally against the large gap from A to C, C to A, that was suggested in the comprehensive plan, just as a matter of principle, you know, not so much your development or this project. It was just, as we look through the comp plan and I look at that, and they passed it a long time ago, I get that, and it's a guide for us. To your point about the B+, I wish there was an easy way for us to say, okay, let's just do this. And unfortunately, there isn't. I appreciate the fact that you went back and looked, and you've already dropped the number of units down. You've relooked at the plan, you took all of the feedback, and you acted on it. So I think that, in my mind, was the right thing to do. To echo Mr. Cusimano, yeah, a little bit more. Maybe if you can, tighten up the pencil a little bit. In concept, I'm not against it, but again, I still have that issue with the C to A, A to C, which is not really your problem. But, you know, I look at the comprehensive plan, I guess, as a guide as opposed to, like, this is how it has to be. It was well thought out. It had a lot of things, but there are certain little parts of it that I personally don't agree with. That's just me. And again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's the big jumps, I'm not in favor of at all. C to A to C, either way. And that was my look at.
But I think partly, and same with me in terms of looking at comp plan, but I think it says a lot when they call it neighborhood density. A good part of the central core of Victor is developed at a greater density than that C density. And the fact of labeling it as a comp plan did, and I think as the sewer plan does as well, as neighborhood density is the highest density, yes, but it is also a very relevant density for the core of the town, and the core of the town that's serviced by gravity sewer. So, yes, it's a big change, but quite honestly, I think it's a big change because it was a mistake in 2000 to ever classify it as an A overlay. That was the mistake. It's not correcting it today. The mistake, I look at the maps and I'm thinking, what were they thinking? And if you read all of the notes back in the discussions of adopting that plan in the very early stages of it, there was a fair amount of dissension and agreement with the owners that, I don't know, why are we taking this land and calling it an A density when in fact, back when it was a full R2, it could have supported more than 100 units. So, it's a big change, but maybe it's a correction of an undo what maybe shouldn't have been done.
Yeah, that's fair.
At the time, when we were doing that in 2000, obviously 20 years ago, it was actually started prior to that. It was more than 20 years.
Right.
It was largely farmland. Charlie Lentine was still running a tractor out there and farming that farm. We were farming up to it. The Fox farm still was being rented. Even Chan Southgate's farm that Reedman's bought was still being farmed, and our comp plan was largely based on, we'd taken the southeast section of Victor and saying, how do we preserve agriculture? We know now in Victor, 25, 30 years later, that we can't do that, so to speak, which is my contention, and you're right. The number of homes that you fit, or in any of this or any parcel, is I struggle to say, is the town prepared to take on this, to even label it a nature preserve? It sounds good when you present it to people, or just take, okay, there's our 50%, you take these two parcels, and then it just turns into what it turns into. I know that it's not clear. I know what you're saying. I live with it. And I know the shortfalls that we have now based on the comp plan that I had 8 years in. And then it took extended amount of time. By the time we got it fully implemented, a lot of time had gone by that that it just, Victor blew past it. Everybody wanted to come to Victor. So now we have an instance here, and Southeast Victor is, like, as you're well involved, is starting to, and even over the Farmington line. So when we do this, do we just take every parcel and say, push everything to the road and abandon what's behind it? I'd love to have a nature preserve. I'd love to have the rocks showing. I'd love to have the creek and people be able to walk along the creek. But it won't happen unless somebody takes some action. It will never happen if somebody doesn't take action. Victor doesn't, Farmington doesn't, the builder doesn't, or whoever. So how do we remedy that? That's my.
Well, I don't disagree with you. And one of the things that I hate to see are these roadside houses popping up and calling them conserved to the rear of the house. I mean, we don't need any more houses along some of these arterials, and you have plans now that are going through the planning board like that, and we are developing streets to take people away from that roadside kind of development. But on the other hand, I think that keeping large open spaces is better than divvying it up among all those roadside houses. Because ultimately what you have is just a smattering of houses around all of the town of Victor, as versus concentrating them here and there and keeping the rural America. And I've said this before, the town of Pittsford dealt with it by spending $10 million on some farmland.
That was in the 90s.
And that was, yeah. And the question is, when Larry Neckbacher stops farming, whether they're going to be able to find a farmer to farm it. And there are still some large farms around that have to travel substantial distances to get to some of these parcels. But I don't disagree. You have very valid points, but on the other hand, this is an appropriate use of this parcel, particularly because of its access to sewer. And I think some of the questions you're raising really have to go to areas that aren't served by water, aren't served by sewer, and then how does the town make rural America out of them without taking value away from those farmers that deserve it as their estate? It's not easy.
And I know you don't, this is my opinion. I know you're going to say it's not your problem, but if we set a precedence on this parcel, there's probably 3 more parcels that are the only ones left that could be served by gravity without a pump station, that we're going to set a precedent, and it's going to, and we have to look at that as a town board.
And if you look at the 2021 draft sewer plan, if it's consistent with the gravity sewer availability and consistent with the comprehensive plan, which this proposal is, which recommended higher density in the comp plan, recommended utilizing sewers when it's available in the master sewer plan, then I think that's appropriate development. Simple as that. And there I wouldn't argue with the comp plan. These are some bigger questions than we can address with our subdivision, quite honestly. But, it's incremental. Yes, you set precedent, but maybe it's a good precedent.
Yeah, I think our charge is the reclassification. I do want to have the Citizens Advisory Committee and Victor Hiking Trails. I think the board would love to probably hear from them, from trail, from conservation or nature. It's all conservation easements, nature preserve, town green space. And I see Wes, do you like to offer some?
Do you want the pointer, Wes?
Sure, I'll take the pointer. I won't need it. Wes Petty from Labello Associates. I just wanted to offer a few thoughts after following the conversation tonight. Mainly, I just wanted to talk briefly about the 50% open space requirement for this project, and what the options are. So, as everybody knows, for a major subdivision, because this is classified as a major subdivision, 50% of the land area, the acreage, needs to be preserved for open space per the town code. So there are 3 different options, as many of you know. One is they can establish the conservation easement, right, for and keep it in private ownership. Like the applicant said, maybe he could divide it up into, divide that land into different parcels. Different property owners could own it. Number 2, they could dedicate the land to the town. And number 3, some other option that would be approved by the town planning board and or town board. So as another option that maybe the developer might look at is maybe they could talk with the Finger Lakes Land Trust or a land trust organization that might take the land into dedication on their own. So, so as to preserve it, right, for open space purposes. That's something that the town planning board and or the town board would have to approve. Just based on my own observations, being out there on the site a few weeks back, I will say that this is a very unique area, as the developer has said, this nature preserve. It's a very unique area. It offers, I think, some great educational opportunities for students. Maybe there's an ecology class or an environmental class at Victor Central Schools. It seems to be a great location to take students, maybe to do some study on the stream or some of the vegetation that's back there, or even just seeing the geology. It's a great piece of land in my personal perspective. So with that, I'll leave you with those thoughts.
Thank you, Wes. Okay, Brian?
Just in follow-up to some of this, from maybe the Park and Rec Advisory Committee meets next Tuesday. Maybe we can schedule a site walk sometime around 5:30. prior to their 7 o'clock meeting, so they have an opportunity to see what the site is, see what it holds, see if it's something that they want to take up in the future. So it's just an opportunity that's coming up next week.
Thank you, Brian. You know. Board members, any other comments?
I just think, I mean, I don't know if we have a relatively small crowd. I don't know if we have anyone.
There are a few, there's actually some comments. Susie has 3 comments by one resident, but we should actually, these fine folks have been sitting here. I mean, essentially, we did close the public hearing. It was for written comments only. This exercise is certainly for the town board an opportunity to see a new concept, but with a new concept, probably some new questions. So certainly, folks, if you have anything at this time, if not, we'll ask. Yes. Like, yeah.
Greg Richards, 1365 Fieldcrest Lane. I'm curious about the part of the parcel that's actually in Farmington, and if you've actually approached the Farmington Town Board regarding that, much like you're doing the town board tonight.
Haven't yet, because we're waiting for.
Okay. Now, I was just curious because on the other side of that stream there is Martenza Park, and it would be just a natural order of things that they would actually just incorporate that into their park structure. And then that would.
Well,
okay.
what we're proposing, but I don't.
Okay. I was just curious about that. All right.
Seemed logical.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And also to comment, I do appreciate all the input you had to our responses to the concerns of the public. You've addressed many of them, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
There are 3 comments by Deidre Kirk at 1476 East Victor Road. Her first comment was, this new plan does not address the increased traffic on East Victor Road, nor address the drastic change in the character of our neighborhood. Her second comment says we can't turn left off of East Victor Road onto 96 or Boughton Hill. It is impossible for the people that already live on the road. Adding 200 plus more cars will make it 10 times worse. And her last comment is, we were told that Southgate wouldn't have houses right on the road and that a berm would be at roadside to create a visual barrier, and it wasn't done that way. Our neighborhood is being ruined. That was it.
Thank you. Okay. No further comments? You do? And I don't see any reason to keep the public hearing open. Oh. Motion to close the public hearing then.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is a couple announcements. We have 5 employees who will be celebrating their birthdays in the month of October. Adam Blank on the 2nd of October, Tina Kolachik on the 10th, Terry Bolt the 14th, excuse me, David McGinnis on the 19th, and Judge Bill Coker on the 24th. In addition, early voting will start on the 23rd of October and run through October 31st. And there's a variety of times. I'm sure they'll be on the town's website. Karen, and okay. And let's see. October 11th, all town facilities would be closed in observance of Indigenous Day, People's Day, formerly Columbus Day. Okay. Approval of meeting minutes. These are, start with August 30th. This is a budget workshop. So, yes, absent is Councilman Guinan for this one.
So moved?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. On the 7th of September, and I was absent for this one.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstained. And on the September 13th, this is a workshop and then subsequent town board meeting. I will abstain again. I was necessarily absent. So,
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
So Karen, you have those then? Okay. Next, when you're ready, abstract of claims, if you could introduce that, please.
Manifest 18 for 2021 in the amount of $339,628.35 has been reviewed by the Victor Town Board with the following accounts charged: General Townwide, General Outside Village, Parkland Trust Fund, Highway Townwide, Sanitary Conveyance Capital Improvement Project, and the lighting districts of Fishers, Brookwood Meadows, High Point, Cobblestone, Coil Ridge, Rolling Meadows, Stone Lay, and Legacy at the Fairways.
Thank you, Karen. Expenditures that are in the range of or exceed $5,000. We're starting with payment to B&M International for the October rent for the courts facility. Next is payment to Bluestone Creek Development, October rent. Payment to Elder Lee for repair for dry road guide rail. Next, payment to Lehigh Hanson, material for town roads. Payment to MVP for the October healthcare. And then the next payment to October retiree healthcare. Northern Supply, 2 new radar signs. Payment to RG&E. Suit Coat Corporation for crack sealing on various town streets. Super seal coating for Fishers Park pickleball courts. Purchase of payment to Van Bortle Ford for a new vehicle for the building and planning department. And then the final one, payment to Victor Central Schools for taxes for 7891 Lehigh Crossing. Total of the above mentioned expenditures, $296,234.96. Total town expenditures minus these previous mentioned expenditures equals $43,393.39. Board members, any question on this evening's abstract as introduced? Hearing none, entertain a motion to approve the payments thereof.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Privilege of the floor. We had no request for privilege of the floor this evening. Moving to public comments and concerns, an opportunity for members of the public to address the town board. Okay, moving to reports of town officials. We have our Director of Finance submitted his report. Highway Superintendent, update on recycling as well. Town Historian, IT, and the Town Clerk has presented to the Town Board the tentative 2022 budget. I do have a few items under a verbal report. I did attend a Farmington Victor Rotary Luncheon this past week. Gave a state of the town and county, budget-wise, and other initiatives that have been taking place. The pickleball grand opening at Fishers Park was last week, and they did honor both Keith Shields and Jerry Collier for their efforts. There had to be 120 people when I went to that event, so it was well attended. great weather happened to be as well. In addition, distributed earlier tonight at your place settings, a report from the Victor Fire Department and the Victor Farmington Ambulance on the call volume. In addition, we received 2 letters of thank yous from the Victor Farmington Food Cupboard and Serenity House. These are thank you letters for the monetary donations from the town staff for Friday's Dress Down Day. Board members, multiple times we've talked about Warder's Cove. We have a conservation easement meeting this coming Thursday. Myself, our town attorney Frank Pavia, Al Benedict, and myself will be meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Robb. That's this Thursday. And we'll have fun. Ontario County growth is the fastest in the 6-county region. From a town perspective, we are now at 15,860 residents. We have increased in the 10-year span by 1,585. Farmington is now the fastest growing town, but we are certainly still and remain the largest. A lot of media attention last week to the announcement of Constellation Brands, and quite honestly, I was notified about 3 weeks ago that it was going to happen. It was disappointing because in the beginning of 2020, prior to the pandemic, the landlord, the Rinaldi family, we had met with them, and Kim and I met with them, and I think maybe Wes as well, and they talked about adding on, because at that time Constellation was actually considering making this the corporate headquarters and closing Chicago and California. They have offices there. At the same time, they had put out a request for proposal, and the DeMarco Group, the site of the proposed or much talked about Fisher's Ridge location, was identified by DeMarco. So they were putting together a package to entice Constellation, and then the pandemic hit. Everything was quiet, and then this came about. So it was disappointing, but quite honestly, the pandemic, the Constellations, the leadership there has protected their employees. They've been working virtually, so people have asked me, well, what's the financial impact? Nothing's going to change, because the financial impact was felt actually during the pandemic. So as far as they are currently right now, I think they're at 20% of their employees are actually back in person. So very little really impact. I have met already with the Red Rinaldi Jr., and he assures me that they'll have a Class A plus tenant to fill that location. In the meantime, I was not happy. I didn't say it in the press releases or anything, but I was not happy that the state came in again and is throwing $9 million towards for Rochester to help them. Quite honestly, I don't know how much more money they can throw at Rochester. Eventually, they have to stand on their own, my own opinion. But I did, Empire State Development, New York State Empire State Development did send me an email last week, and that they said they will assist the town and Ontario County in trying to attract a new company to that site. It's interesting, this is the crazy world we live in with enticements, and we poach from one another. Today, they take Constellation. Tomorrow, we may be taking another company. I know First American will be moving in within the next month. They're from Monroe County. Constellation is currently under a 10-year pilot agreement, and naturally, this is year 8. So they're notifying the county that they'll be moving after year 10. So those are the games that are out there. But as far as the financial hit, property taxes will have to continue to be made, so we'll be made whole on that. And if they were 100%, with attendance today, yes, it would be a hit. But the hit was already felt during the early stages of the pandemic. And we have 2 more years of whatever employees are going there to continue to, support our the ancillary type of businesses in our town. I do want to mention that recently the State Comptroller's Office notified the town that for the 3rd year in a row, we have a 0.0 fiscal distress designation, which is outstanding. And then I guess finally the other thing, I did recently, and Brian, I haven't had a chance to, I was out of the office for wedding there, a day and a half, but our resident from Setter's Run, I haven't had not a chance to talk to Frank. Have you heard from this resident?
I have not spoken.
Okay, so there's a resident, so we're Village on the Park, right? Setter's Run is back there. He wants, so he's putting up, he wants to access with a heavy-duty piece of equipment to bring in stone, but he wants to come through our property. Brian and I both have concerns about digging up, you know, just allowing someone to use that. And, you know, this guy's willing to, you know, I'll give you a certificate of insurance, this and that, but probably more for a conversation for you and I to have on this. But I just wanted, in case any board members were brought up, contacted by this individual, because I originally told him, I don't think it's going to happen, but I said I'll give it as a courtesy, I'll circle back with our attorney, so. Okay. Board members, you have any committee you'd like to report on before we move to resolutions? Okay, resolution, Civic Plus. This is switching vendors for processing of credit cards and payments.
Second.
Okay. First, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 2, budget transfer to fund equipment purchase for the Highway Department. This is funding to use for Skyjack scissor lift.
How big is that scissors lift, Mark? Like, how many people? Is it a one person, two person? 1 to 2. 1 to 2? Yeah, it's not a real big one then, just,
500 pounds.
what'd you say?
500 pounds.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 3, the purchase of the scissor lift through Admar Equipment and Supplies.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Number 4, intermunicipal agreement, Ontario County Municipal Snow and Ice. My only question is on the first resolved, said agreement to expire September 30th, 2021, or should that be 2022?
22.
22? Okay, so,
So moved as amended?
yes.
Second.
We have a second, or do we get a second?
Yes.
Second, okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Resolution is passed. Number 5, after public hearing reclassification of 1403 East Vector Road, commonly known as Stonebrook subdivision, from a residential overlay district A to a residential overlay district C. Looking for a motion to bring this to the floor.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. I do want to, my comment, I just want to echo, I think what, I know I want to echo what Councilman Cusimano said, that, and I think Councilman Kohovic did as well. We can tweak it a few homes. I support the C. I do applaud you for reducing it from the 92 to 85, but a couple more certainly would not hurt my feelings. I am going to proceed regardless with a speed reduction on East Victor Road, and then certainly have Highway Superintendent take a look at that potential right-hand turn onto Route 96. So.
The other thing, I was quiet, I didn't say, I was listening to everybody's comments, but the other thing that I appreciated was the redesign and also answering some of those water questions. I was really pleased with that understanding of the 10 acres out of the 12 that you're going to be able to redivert. I think that's certainly going to help. And so I appreciate that, and I agree. This is the first step in the rezoning. Their process is long. I understand that, and I'm sure the planning board will be working on that reduction as well as they work through some of that. But the gravity feed, it fits. I think it's going to be higher density, and but I'm all about not putting in more pump stations if we don't have to. So.
And Brian, I would ask, would you do me a favor? You mentioned the CAC site walk next Tuesday. Would you notify Trail Boss or the trail, the hiking trails folks, and maybe walk with you?
And it might end up being passive, you know, that whole trail over there might end up being passive, but I think that having that dedication, I mean, maybe that'll bring Farmington and Victor together, to work on some recreation plans together, with that divided line between us.
Okay. Okay. Yes, yeah. I haven't voted yet. We had the first, the second. Clerk, you're gonna get. Okay. With that said, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those against?
No.
Okay. Number 6, resolution accepting letter of credit Willis Hill Estates Phase 2, letter of credit which will expire September 10th, 2022, and has a dollar amount in the resolve, $1,358,392.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next is public comment. Again, opportunity for public comment. Any member of the public care to address the town board? Hearing none, seeing none, motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Yes, so this, Brian, you got a minute just to talk to Frank about this request by this resident?